I hope you enjoyed the last episode of Continental Connections. As you saw, me, Henry, Samir were off to Spain, a country that I've wanted to carp fish in for a very, very long time now. The first venue of choice was the River Ebro. So, while we've got me and Samir here, we thought we'd talk to you about how we approached it and exactly how we made it happen.
When most people think of carp fishing in Spain, I think the first venue that springs to mind is actually the River Ebro. It's Spain's most iconic waterway, has been fished for a number of years, and it kind of made logical sense for us to start off there. The River Ebro is a massive piece of water. It stretches out for over 930 kilometres, all the way from the north of Spain down to the Mediterranean Sea at the Delta, and it's dammed at multiple locations along the way. And for this particular film, we chose to target Mequinenza, as it is the most famous stretch of the River Ebro. To be successful on the River Ebro, you need really strong tackle, big leads, and to be confident in a boat.
Boats. I feel like this is a good topic for me. I'll be honest, turning up to the River Ebro, I did feel a little bit out of my depth, and knowing that I was going to be fishing alongside Henry and Samir, who have both done a lot of fishing out in boats. Now, don't get me wrong, I've been in one before, I've done a little bit on the canals and a little bit on still waters, but the river was going to be a whole different kettle of fish. Now, we actually ended up fishing quite a long way out on the river, which was part of the reason why I found it a little bit of a struggle. Not to mention the fact that I've got Samir on one side and Henry on the other, lines going out everywhere, trying to not just get out and get the rig in, but then coming in a straight line in the current and the wind to get back without taking anyone else's rod out. So that was the main difficult part of it. And the reason why we're fishing so far across was because of the work that Samir had put in prior to the trip. He'd been going down the river, watching the water, putting a little bait in a few days before, and he knew the general area of where the fish were. But I guess it wouldn't be right for me to talk about this, so I'll hand you over to Samir and he can go into the depth of exactly why we were fishing this part of the river.
And this particular stretch of the Ebro at Mequinenza is actually quite tricky to fish. So we chose to set up in a swim that actually met on the exact point where the Segway came in on the right and the Ebro came on the left. And we had the flow from the Segway pumping into the River Ebro, and twice a day we'd have the dam at Caspe also open, releasing a huge torrent of water which would often wipe our rods out. So much so we needed to cable tie two 8-ounce leads together to be able to hold bottom at distance. The spots we ended up depositing our line seemed to be in that central area. The fish were moving in and out of there with the flow all day long, and we decided to set our rods against the silt wall of around 8 metres. And that would be the spots that done the most of the bites during our time there. Initially, we decided to use PVA bags packed with attraction and liquids to try and pull the fish down, but once we got a few bites and we started introducing a bit of bait to try and hold the fish in the zone, we switched over to PVA sticks, which were a lot quicker and easy to get back in the water and meant that we could get those bites coming. Shredder! Once the bites were coming regularly, it was really important to keep that feed going in, and we went for a couple of tactics when it came to baiting. First of all, I fished a lot of tiger nut slush and a lot of sweet tigers. Reason for that is the bream and the whitefish aren't going to be able to consume those tigers, so they were 100% left there for the carp. We also fed a lot with a highly attractive and really soluble new monster shrimp range of boilies, which should be available in the shops by the time this video goes out. Having a combination of these two baits, we had high attraction with the boilies and always bait on the spot with the tiger nuts, meant that we were sure there was always something for the carp to consume when they arrived on our spots. Keeping the good quality bait going in is one thing, but what you also need is strong, reliable rigs when fishing savage rivers.
In the build-up to this trip, both the lads told me to make sure I've got a lot of strong and reliable tackle with me. Starting out with the leads, I've never used leads this big, but we started out with a 10-ounce gripper lead. Now, I quickly found out that even that wasn't going to be sufficient. On the first morning, I could sense that my rig was actually dragging along the river, so I went over to Samir, asked him what his take was, and he was actually using 2 leads cable tied together, and that was the way, especially when the dam was open, that we were able to hold bottom at such range out in the river. Now, when it comes to the actual rig itself, I'm not going to waffle on because you can probably tell that that is a pretty simple blowback rig. Now, this is actually the first rig I ever used in my early carp fishing days, and there's a reason why this rig has stood the test of time. It's strong, reliable, simple, but most importantly, really effective. Now, I started off with a 15mm cultured hook bait, and then I moved on to 18s and then to 20s, and that's just because there was a lot of bream, a lot of nuisance fish, and a lot of small commons as well, which we wanted to kind of avoid. The hook is a size 5 claw, which is something that I use in the UK, but it's super, super strong, so I didn't have any worries about using this on the river. Keeping everything nice and neat, little tungsten kicker on there, and then a piece of putty in the middle. Not like it'd matter all that much on a big river system, but it makes me feel slightly more confident. And then the line itself is £25 skin link. Now, this is really abrasion resistant. It's stiff enough to kick out when you drop, but it's also supple enough when stripped back to fly and set the hook nicely. That's the rig. Like I say, nothing difficult at all. And the main thing really was getting it on the bottom, keeping it on the spot, and obviously keeping that bait over the top of it. And I didn't actually expect it to happen, but I think it was on our 3rd morning. My rod ripped off. I remember picking the rod up, felt a little bit of grating, straight out in the boat. I was on my own. I remember the lads were already up. It was really early morning, and they were watching me out across the river. Didn't have a clue how big it was, but it was a monster. Just under 52 pounds. Of course, my biggest carp from Spain and my biggest carp from the River Ebro. So I hope from this that you've managed to learn something. I certainly did. Obviously, I've got Samir mainly to thank for this. He plugged us with all the venues, all the intel, and then obviously Henry as well for bringing me and replacing them from Dan. So yeah,
well done, mate. Well done, geezer. Well deserved.